welcome to Push Your Glasses Up. I'm Mikey.
And I'm Reena, and hi.
Ew.
I can't stop singing this stupid song in my head because I made hot chocolate, but I keep going, hot chocolate!
So you're taking Hot Pockets and changing it to hot chocolate?
Hot chocolate!
Okay.
And then that's where I'm at. So, with marshmallows, because there's still no fluff. I cannot find fluff. We've talked about this. Like, this is a follow-up to Fluffgate, and there's still no fluff.
This is absurd. We are in Massachusetts, right? And you are in the city of fluff, the hometown of fluff.
It's like I don't know. Like, I just did not think that fluff would be, something that was impacted by this pandemic. But you know what? It just finds a way into all facets of life.
I'm not seeing anything about it.
That's just it. That's the crazy part. I looked this up too. I tried to see, like, is there something weird? Like, did something happen? Why is there a fluff shortage?
I'm going to assume that they just have less people working in the factory at any given time, and so it's just not getting out as quick as it should be.
Is there, like, some sort of viral TikTok video that I'm not aware of that, like, uses fluff as an ingredient, and, like, that's why there's no fluff? Like, I don't...
It's not a viral post. It's just viral.
I just, there are some things you can predict, and there are others that just are a complete surprise.
Yeah. Well...
the beauty of life.
Well, you will be able to take your one wish and wish for fluff, because we're going to talk about two movies today, and the first one is Wonder Woman 84.
Hold on. I'm going to go grab my citrine. Because I have some.
Yep.
But anyway, yes, Wonder Woman, 1984.
This is disappointing.
Yeah.
I do like certain things about this movie. I'm on the side of I like the mall scene because it felt like the old show. It's very contrasting with the last movie, but it did feel like a version of Wonder Woman that I do know. So I was fine with that stuff. There's other stuff in this movie that has much larger tones and consequences that feel inappropriate. Like the body swap thing.
Well, okay, so let's start from let's get to that. Let's start from the beginning. It's probably the easiest way to kind of go over our likes and dislikes, I think, and summarize it. So, opening the mall scene, I didn't like it as much. I don't get, like, someone really just wanted to use the lasso of truth in this movie.
Well, Patty Jenkins said they wanted to give her a Spider-Man moment, and it literally was because she was web swinging.
Yes, but it was like that was kind of like the big premiere thing.
I did appreciate, like, part of that scene is she's just stopping people. Mm-hmm. She's not going out of her way to, like, warrior stomp all over people. She's just stopping people and protecting
especially not
innocence.
In the mall in front of children.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, I liked that aspect of it, because the sword and shield version of Wonder Woman is fine, but the version that I've always known growing up, that's why it felt more like that, because it wasn't just like punch, kill.
Well, I mean, that makes sense too in contrast, and I didn't actually think of it that way, where, like, sword and shield makes sense when you're in a war, a literal war, versus you're stopping some robbers in a mall.
Well, that was also her coming into this world from a warrior standpoint, where now she's been in this culture for however long. If it's the 80s, like, what, 60 years? So, or wait, no, World War II, not World War I. That stupid Zack Snyder picture that's been going around lately where she's holding a bunch of beheaded skulls is confusing me. So like 40 years, basically. But she's been around for like 40 years in this society, so I would assume that she's gotten to the point where she's treating it less like everything is war and more like, hey, I just want to protect people. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I understand why people don't love that scene, because if they do love the stuff from the first movie, it's a high contrast, and it's very jarring because it's like right at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. I did like, though, I will say, whoever did the costume design and, like, just her style in this is flawless. And of course that's going to be like a thing that, like, I am drawn to, but like I just like how they had a nice balance of like high fashion and 80s without being so far in like the kitschy 80s kind of vibe. And they do bring that in
The
like a
shoulder
little
pad
bit later
power
when
suits.
yeah, you know what I mean? And like they didn't have her have some big like teased hairdo. I just thought like that sort of like elegant styling they did for her throughout was like amazing.
They kept that to the background actors and stuff. Like in the mall scene, like you see more of that with the extras and stuff, which is, I think that's fine because you're setting up the setting. But if you had to look at that constantly it would kind of be jarring. This movie's long as fuck.
It is. I'm trying to think. I haven't even like scratched the surface yet. And then I was going to talk about Kristen Wiig as like the forever superhero movie trope of nerd person treated poorly.
It's not even a superhero trope. It's the nerdy girl, hot girl trope that goes way,
this is
way
like a double
beyond.
This is like a double whammy of that because there's that, but there's like nerd gets treated badly, something happens, gains powers, becomes supervillain, and then you get like the she's all that on top of it.
I still think this is done better with the nerd to villain trope than other movies have done it, because I think Kristen Wiig actually makes that character likable at the beginning. Whereas you look at like Jamie Foxx's Electro, and it's just not a likable character. That's a cartoon character, whereas this seemed like a person.
And I do appreciate that she asked Diana to lunch, and then they do end up like going to lunch. And one that's like that takes a lot of guts if you kind of feel like you're a nobody to ask like the hottest girl in the office to be your friend. Basically,
it should have been a date. That should have just been a date.
It was a friend date, and I loved that. And it like took this whole like I mean, like obviously it became like a, you know, one versus the other later on, but I liked the sense of camaraderie, and I liked, you know, like women sticking up for each other. And I like how it started out with her admiring Diana. Like she wasn't necessarily jealous of her, but she admired her.
Right.
Because she was nice to her. Like she's like, oh, I want to be this person because this person is great.
Yeah. That's the thing is the performances in this movie are good. Pedro Pascal in this movie, be like, I appreciate that his character is cartoony, but like they're not given the best stuff. I will say, I will defend what people are calling a stupid MacGuffin with the fact that there's a stone that makes wishes come true. That's literally what the entirety of 10 years of the MCU is built on, so I don't understand why it's a problem here.
It's just five like bespoke jewels instead of one, or 6 instead of 1.
Thanos needed a big fancy glove to collect all of his wishing stones in. This one just happened to be 1.
He would have had a way easier time if he just went for this one. I mean, he could like combing the galaxy for all of these stones when he could have just found a hunk of citrine with the language of the gods inside.
There's ties with this object that go into the grander universe and stuff with like Sandman and stuff. So I like, it is an interesting piece of DC lore. It just wasn't explored very much. But yeah, I had no problem with that aspect of it. Like the things that most people had problems with, I didn't really have a problem with. There were just certain things like there were effect shots that didn't look good. The movie was horribly paced and way too long. And then the thing that I mentioned before, the body swap.
Yeah, we can talk about that because I have done a good deal of thinking about that. And so big spoiler for those who haven't seen it. You know, again, the one thing that Diana wishes for is for Steve Trevor to come back. And, like, hey, we all love Steve. Steve is great. But the catch seems to be that Steve comes back, but he is in someone else's body. Like, and it's like a random dude that we don't know. And there isn't, like, we'll get to that part that you mean, Mikey, but for you can wish
it's a monkey.
Anything
can
come
paw.
true. But I don't understand, like, if the sky's the limit, if anything can happen, he couldn't just show up. Like, he had
That's
to
what I mean. Like, the monkey's paw aspect of this is that she was becoming weaker, and that wasn't explained until the final act of the movie. The thing with the body swap is it's completely unnecessary. And And it causes the problem of, did she just fuck a man's body without him saying it was okay?
So there's a couple, I think, now hear me out, and I'm not justifying it, and this actually makes it worse, but I think that whole scene where Steve's kind of trying on Hitler's clothes and kind of talking about, like, who this man seems to be, I think that was their attempt of making it seem like he'd be cool with it, because he's, like, this, like, engineer, like, playboy, and he has, like, you know, he works out and takes care of himself, which doesn't justify it all, but I literally think that was their solution, which tells me they knew this was problematic.
It was just a couple days ago that somebody was on Twitter defending it, and Patty Jenkins retweeted it saying, "Lol, exactly." And I'm like, you shouldn't be laughing about the fact that people are concerned about the way this is portrayed, because it does not play well to me. It plays really poorly.
There's only one way this works.
Exactly.
There's one way this works.
Yeah, go for it.
The only way. Wait. No, I don't think you know the way that I'm going to explain it, though. One way that this works, if it's Zach Baggins from Ghost Adventurers, because we know that man consents to being possessed, straight up, number one. And number two, he would totally fuck your girlfriend.
I have no idea.
He would do it for you.
About.
You've never seen Ghost Adventurers?
No.
You've never seen the Ghost Bros?
No. I'm assuming it's one of the haunted house reality shows you're talking about.
Yes, but he always is like antagonizing the spirits and be like, if you're here right now, you come hit me. You come hit me right in the face. You can possess me. You're gonna possess me right now. I'm right here. He's like, it's literally a Ghost Adventurer. Ghost Adventurers is like a bro dude who's like harassing spirits, basically. And again, I feel like that man would be the exception to this, because one, he consents to both being possessed by another spirit and sleeping with your girlfriend.
Right.
If it's not Zach Baggins from Ghost Adventures, then it no longer works. That's the only exception.
So that's the thing, is like it's made worse by the fact that it's completely unnecessary to do this.
Right? He could have just woken up on a bench and been like, where am I?
The stipulation is Diana's going to have to rescind her wish in order for this to be fixed. Why is it overcomplicated adding this actual person to the situation when you could just say, I wish for Steve to exist again. He exists again.
It could have been like in Battlestar Galactica when Starbuck just comes back. And there's no explanation to why, and everyone's like, okay, cool. And they just kind of roll with it. And then when her mission is complete, she disappears. And that's it. And it's fine. And it's like, it's weird, but like again, this is where you take the creative license. Like, to your point, it was just awkward. And I honestly think the fact that they had Diana only see him as Steve was another way to try and like compensate for it. But like, why are you making so much effort to prove that this is like
exactly they're okay trying so hard to make it seem okay when it's not. And they could have taken the far easier route of just saying, okay, poof, he exists again, because it's about the goodbye. It's not about how he got back. Like, it's so mind-boggling to me why that was chosen. But so that's the thing that I disliked the most in this movie, even beyond like the technical runtime being way too long, all that shit. But there's other stuff with like, they had a lot of time to work on the effects in this movie. And when Diana rides the missile and then saves the two children, it looks like somebody did that over a weekend. Like, the way that they're rolling on the street, there's like no proper physics to it whatsoever, and it looks like somebody did it in a couple of hours, because it was supposed to come out a year ago. It's more like an Indiana Jones film. Well, no, it's like with the action adventure like kind of thing, and less like a big Crystal budget Skull with its action, because you know, the more dramatic rolling, the like... Well, it's like cartoonish roll, because anything that's physical, like, as soon as you don't put weight behind it, it looks real fake. So it's like... I mean, I'm not shitting on Indiana Jones either. I'm just saying stylistically, that movie has a different approach.
And this one, it was like it was blending too many
Well,
things.
and that's the thing is, as soon as they disassociate from the realistic stuff of like she's rolling on the ground holding two children, that should look real. But like when she's like riding the lightning and stuff, like that's fine. That looked cool to me because it didn't need to have like realistic weight. I don't need it for that moment, so it looks fine there. But it's like they took the mentality of that and applied it to the grounded stuff that just doesn't. It contrasts too much with each other.
The other thing too is like I understand in the first movie she had just left the mascara, like she was like learning about the world, like the naivete was fine, but like it's been like, what did we say, 40 years, 60 years, and like the fact that she like still is so like needs Steve to like support her in certain aspects, or that like I'll never love again. And I don't know, I just felt like in all of that time her character didn't progress, and that was kind of disappointing for me. Like, yes, she learned how to turn a jet invisible. I did like that very much.
I do. Yeah, that was one of the best scenes in the movie. But I do think she progressed a bit, but I don't think it was in a necessarily a good way. I think when Steve died, and then everyone like it kind of showed it through the photograph aspect of like it showed what is the character's name, Candy, like as an old woman, and then like so her friends are gone, so she's alone, so she progressed to the point of like, I guess I don't need anybody, but like that's a step back in the right direction or wrong direction kind of aspect of it. I think it would have been nice to see her with like people that she can converse with, and it I get it, it's to set up like both she and Kristen Wiig's character are both alone, so they find each other and become friends, but like I don't think it played as well as they wanted it to.
Well, it's like before she left, she was never alone. She lived in this beautiful community of Amazons. So that's like a new thing for her in addition. But
Yeah.
I don't I don't know. I like to sometimes compare Diana to Agent Carter.
Yeah.
And they both lost Steves. And you look at like she went on to form Shield, and she's like, I'm just gonna do this. You know, and we know even before the end of Endgame, she lived a very full life.
Yeah.
And like did cool shit. You know what I mean? She was like, all right. And I would have kind of liked to see Diana, like, I would like to have seen her moved on, and then she just randomly makes that wish.
Right.
Instead of it being like her soul core, like one thing she wants in the world kind of deal.
Like it might have played a little bit better if the amount of time between eras was shorter. Like maybe if this was like in the early 60s, like 61, 62 or something, where it's been like 20 years is still a long time to separate off, but like it's a little more believable that it would be lingering.
And at this point, so much would have happened in the world, right?
Yeah.
Like she would have seen so many things, and so much would have happened, and she, you know, has been doing her best to like fight crime and, you know, carry on. I don't know. I just feel like she seemed kind of stagnant, and that was just like kind of a bummer. Another thing I just remembered that I was going to say is that I almost feel like I wish Kristen Wiig wasn't a villain in this movie. Maybe they alluded to her becoming one later. But I liked when they were like researching the crystal together, and like I still wouldn't even have minded if she like just ended up giving it to Max, like just because he was flirting with her.
That's the other thing, is they contradict themselves in the story, because he takes it, he steals it, but then she tells Diana
You're right.
that she gave it to him. It's, I don't know, it's very messy. This whole thing is messy. there are things that are good, but ultimately it is like 85% messy.
Because why did she, I mean, I know that's the character, but it just seemed like, now I'm going to be a cheetah and I'm going to fight you, and your armor makes no difference whatsoever, and this fight is kind of pointless because the actual villain isn't here.
the metaphor of the shield, the armor was only slowing down Cheetah is kind of like the entirety of that scene, is it was just slowing down the situation when it's like, it's similar to Doctor Strange. Like, I like the fact that they took the risk of doing something where the ultimate villain of the movie isn't just like a person to punch. It is like a situation of a lesson to be learned, as opposed to, you know, just, hey, I knocked you out, you're done. It's just everything surrounding it didn't support that so well.
Oh, I thought of another contradiction. Remember, he was like, everyone gets one wish, but how come she got two?
How come who got two?
Kristen Wiig got two.
She wished on the stone, and then she wished on him.
Well, but didn't he say, like, remember when he was, like, looking for more people to make wishes? He's like, did you already wish? And the person's like, yeah.
Because
like,
they touched him. So once he becomes, quote unquote, the stone, then whoever made a wish before, it like clears the cache and they can make a wish again, because they're not touching the actual stone, they're touching him. But then also
rules.
They kind of explained it a way that maybe he can do other things with it, because he's kind of like, but I make the rules. So like, whatever.
Like, you get an extra wish. Why? Because I like you.
Yeah, it's because maybe now that he's the thing being wished on, he can be like, well, I can change the numbers. Whatever.
Well, there was also, like, the monkey's paw aspect, and I felt like her whole, you're losing your humanity, like, really wasn't the same as, like...
It was on the nose.
Like,
it was very on the nose.
Right? And then, like, why did Diana kind of get, like, a double whammy? Like, again, like, well, why did different rules apply?
What's funny about the transformation for her is they have a throwaway line that makes it seem like she's going to transform, because, like, she's already in this, like, enhanced form where she's stronger and faster and whatever, but she still looks like herself. And then when Pedro Pascal goes up to her and says the thing about, like, a beauty product that's in testing, I assumed that was going to be, because that's been used in different versions of, like, people transforming into animals, especially in DC, like on one of the Batman, I believe, animated shows.
I remember, a Catwoman becomes a literal Catwoman.
Exactly. And it was in, like, a beauty supply factory thing. And so why throw that random line in there if you, like, that sets up that they could do that, instead of just being like, I wish for you to be the ultimate predator, and then monkey's paw, she's a cheetah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, and is that even the ultimate predator? Because I feel like I would turn into a great white shark if I made that reference. If that was my wish,
and just flop around on the ground.
Right, I would be like a goddamn T-Rex.
Well, that's where I was going. I was like, a raptor, maybe.
Right, Mikey, is that you? Blue, is that you? Like, yeah, it's like a cheetah. Like, you just want to be really fast. Like, what are the criteria here? Like, I don't.
Well, because that's the other thing too, is like, if you're really going this direction, a cheetah is not that agile. It's
fast. Only fast for but like briefly.
And it can make turns, but they're kind of wide turns, because it's going so fast. It can't, like, turn on a dime. So the fact that she's, like, just bouncing around and stuff, like, I listen, it's part of the character. It's always been part of the character. But if you're going for, like, really hammering home that it's a cheetah and that's the ultimate predator, you would think it's like, okay, more in line with what cheetahs can do. But yeah, this movie is just a letdown. Like, I'll defend the parts that I'll defend, like the invisible jet scene, and when she rides the lightning, I think is a very emotionally charged moment that is carried probably mostly by the score. And I think Hans Zimmer's score is not that great all around in this movie, but that scene, it's very, very, very good. But for the most part, it's just like, whatever, man.
Honestly, if I think about it, one of my favorite parts was Pedro Pascal, because I feel like with all like the fake commercials, and like basically has this like company that's not actually doing well, and like poor investments and creating this big con. I like actually really like that aspect, because sometimes you see random ass commercials on TV and you're like, what? Like,
Yeah.
what is. I feel like that part was really believable. I just, like, I liked him, like, as the epitome of the 80s excess, like,
He was
more.
actually like the person that probably showed the most range throughout the movie, because in the moments when he's like desperate to get to his kid, it's so different than his public persona. Like, it actually is probably the best performance in the movie, just for in the sheer like width of range, because Kristen Wiig is great in this movie, but like once she turns into villain version, it's kind of down the middle of the road.
It's not just greed that takes him over, though. It's also panic and fear. I mean, like, he did start out legit, which we
Yeah.
find out later. You know, he wasn't always trying to be, like, shady, but, you know, like, there's a lot of factors that went into who he is, and, like, trying to find a way to
The
make
one
this
thing
work.
I didn't love with Max in this movie is the number of times that they really over explained what he was doing, where he's grabbing onto somebody's arm and goes, "But do you wish it?" It was like 6 times. Yeah, we get it. We get that this is what
Hmm.
he's doing. You don't need to spend 40 minutes on this one thing.
But and then I mean I did like the resolution where he was trying to find, like, suddenly remembered, one, that he had a son, and two, that he didn't
Yeah.
have him with him. But at the same time, it was just like, and like I get like the not wanting to look like a loser in front of your
Yeah.
child, like, was a big thing. But like, did anything even happen to him, or did he just like collect his kid and then
I
leave?
mean, that's one of the things that people have complained about. I don't need a resolution in a movie like this that straight up says like, and then he was arrested. Like, I assume off screen he was arrested, but like in this movie, no, they don't technically show anything. They don't. Nobody has a finite resolution in this movie, except for, I guess, because like Diana does, because she says goodbye to Steve, and then that's the finite resolution for her. But like, there's no comeuppance that we see on screen for the villains. But like, I'm fine with that. Like, it's whatever. Like, the movie is about learning a lesson. I don't need to see somebody actually getting arrested for a lesson to be shown.
I think what happened was he collected his son and then decided to live a simple life as a farmer.
Yep. Put his armor on a scarecrow.
Yep, and
And
just,
yeah.
collect the harvest.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know. I like, just seemed like, kind of seemed like a throwaway for such like Wonder Woman was like such a big deal, and this.
It's almost like it's very clear that this fits more in line with Aquaman than anything else. And it's almost like they saw the success of Aquaman while they were filming and were like, oh shit, we gotta like lean this way a lot more.
But I actually liked Aquaman
Well,
way better.
well, that's the thing is I thought Aquaman was fine. I didn't love it. It's not at the top of my list of like this universe movies, but I just see the tone, like the extremely bright tone of this movie and that movie.
But I
Fit
think
together.
because Aquaman, so much of it takes place literally underwater. I think you get away with more
Well, it's not. I
because.
mean, with Aquaman, it's not even just that. It's like the extremely green screen sunset while they're at the lighthouse, and like
Hmm.
there's stuff that just looks fake in both of them. And part of Aquaman, I think, is it was filmed so that some stuff would be in 3D. So the planes are a little bit weird when you're looking at it when it's not in 3D. But it's just one of those things where I think visually speaking, they fit together more than like this movie and obviously like Man of Steel or Batman v Superman, because those are gray slates pretty much. But yeah, it's
Hmm.
I will say, in the scene where the armor is explained at the beginning to child Diana, I saw the eyes and I went, that's Linda Carter. And then the mid-credit scene was, in fact, Linda Carter. And I did smile at that reveal. I
did like that. Yeah, I agree with you on that one.
That's the thing is I appreciate that they're leaning towards the TV show more. It just didn't quite come together in the right way.
I think it's hard when you've only introduced Diana as a warrior. And like, because so when we think about where we have the first Wonder Woman, but then in Justice League, she's still like ready to throw down.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's sort of a problem with the collective movie, because like you get that kind of with the first Avengers movie too, where it's like everyone's a little bit more of a silhouette of what they are, as opposed to like getting a deep dive into the character, where the solo movies work for that. So I can't blame Justice League or Batman v Superman for that matter too much on that, but like this is when it's supposed to happen. And like there were little notes of it in the first Wonder Woman movie where she's like, oh, a baby, or like the ice cream moment and stuff, and it's that never did it fully, but it was nice to see it there. And this maybe went a little too hard in the other direction, but yeah.
Yep.
On the completely other side of the movies released on a holiday, we're going to switch it up to Soul, which was tremendous.
Lovely. Absolutely lovely. That movie made me feel good inside.
Yeah. I will say there was something I wish happened to come out in the end of this movie that I felt like they were kind of leaning into. Just the partnership of the two main characters made it seem like they're going to meet each other in the end again, like on Earth. Mm-hmm. And it just felt like it would have been poetic, because at the end of this, it's just to run it down real quick. It's about a man who's following his dream finally, and then he dies before he gets to fulfill his dream. And then weird limbo misadventures happen, and then he's back on Earth. So that's that. Mm-hmm. But he comes to the realization that he wants to actually be teaching children at the end of this movie. Mm-hmm. So in my head, I was picturing them bringing, I can't think of the name of the character that was...
23?
Yes, yeah.
75? 86?
Yeah.
There's a number.
Yeah, it's the numbered character played by Tina Fey. It made me feel like when it was going to do like a time jump at the end, and you'd be able to tell that that character was who Joe had the adventure with, and that he would be a teacher for that character. Other than that, I was so happy with this movie. That would have just been like a nice extra super happy ending moment. Yeah.
22. It was 22. I was close.
Yeah. This is just one of those, like, as I get older, my preference on Pixar movies has changed. The majority of the ones I love the most have been like they feature like just a moment of emotion, like a very strong moment of emotion. Whereas the ones I appreciate the most now have been the newer ones that are a little more existential, along the lines of like Coco, which is about saying goodbye to people but keeping them in memory, and this, where it's more about like what exactly does it mean to exist, which is very big for a children's movie.
Oh, and the difference between like what you're
meant, yeah,
purpose
what you're meant to do,
and what your spark
about.
is.
Yeah,
and that they definitely don't have to be the same thing.
Right, and that is such a huge lesson. Like, it's a reminder that I, as a 36-year-old man, needed. I can't imagine if I was given that advice. Like, I definitely was not given that advice as a kid. I was taught to like find what you're passionate about and go after it without any gray area. And that's sort of that's a big setup for failure in a way, because what if it doesn't happen? Mm-hmm. So
Or what if you're really good at something, but you're not passionate about
Yeah.
it? That also happens. Like, there are plenty of kids who end up doing some sort of activity. Maybe it's music, maybe it's a sport, and they excel at it. They're great at it, but they don't love it. They just happen to be naturally good at it. And should they just keep doing it just because they're good at it, even if it makes them miserable? No.
Yeah. And it's, yeah.
Should they do something that you love doing but are bad at because you love doing it? Yes.
Absolutely.
I am a mediocre musician, but god damn it, I will still do music.
I will do a music.
I will do the music.
Yeah, it's...
I am literally middle of the road at every single thing I love. And I just don't give a shit.
What it means to be human.
Right?
It's just like the art styles, the different designs for the different locations and the different, like, what's crazy is this. So a couple years ago now, I was making trips back and forth from here to New York because of a family member being in the hospital for like a year. And it made me resent the city in a way, just because my only connection to it was this shitty situation. And the parts of this movie that took place in New York made me miss it, which nothing has done that. Like I can watch I can watch Spider-Man Far From Home. That didn't do it. Like that's just granted he's mostly not in New York, but like the scenes that are in New York, it was just like, oh yeah, there's New York, and there was no emotional connection to it whatsoever. But like this movie, something about it just like it felt like a living place, and it's wild.
I will say, as someone who watches a lot of animated features, when I watch a story, particularly a modern anime that takes place in Tokyo, like for instance, Your Name is a good example of this, I feel the same way. Because when you for some reason when you see it rendered artistically, but also living and breathing and moving in animation, it just hits you different than if you were watching a movie, like a live action movie that takes place in New York. I don't know why it's when you're seeing it like through someone else's eyes, almost in a way.
I think it's because it's getting captured in such an idyllic way, as opposed to just a picture.
Yep.
It's done so well, and it made me miss being in New York as opposed to resenting it, which is remarkable. Like I obviously don't want to resent New York. I don't want to hold up that stereotype of Bostonians hating New York. But it just, the situation I went through with my family made me really not look forward to going to that city. And this flipped that around entirely. It's wild.
I just like how they did the afterlife, and because it felt like a dream. The way it was very abstract and not in certain places not defined.
Yeah, it was,
and there was lots of empty space.
Yeah, it was a blank slate starry, like deep space starriness to it. Where it was just black with white light and sparkles. Which is cool. I did see somebody posted the influence of where that came from, and it is a painting that was done that somebody took inspiration for that for. I don't recall exactly where I had seen that though.
But even like The Great Before, how it's like soft and like squishy, but like not well defined, and the beings that all the Jerrys are also just line drawings. It reminded me of have you ever seen that episode of Adventure Time?
Probably.
Why can't I... What? I can't think of his name, but they go...
Kumail Nanjiani's character on Adventure Time?
Yeah,
yes! I can't remember the name of the character.
Yes! But that's what it felt like, and I was so all about that.
Yeah, well, what was cool is there's an episode of... Is it Inside Pixar that's on Disney Plus.
Maybe?
Yeah, it's Inside Pixar, and it talks they one of the episodes is focused on the artist who was in charge of the design of those characters, because she just hit out in a meeting like, what if they're designed after these they're
Prismo. His name was Prismo.
What if they're designed after Hirschfeld drawings? Like, that's who the inspiration for who the genie was coming from in Aladdin. And it's all like just these single line versions of things, like further than Hirschfeld, where Hirschfeld was like, it looked like it could be a single line, whereas these were single lines. So they told her, okay, have it for us next week. And then she had to figure out how to do like wire art to like actually manipulate basically like wire coat hangers into like people. And it's super cool. It's a really fascinating episode of that show.
I feel like a part of it too is, so when you go, from the great before into life, you don't really remember your before because it's not very tangible.
Yeah, and so it's all abstract.
Like, so like you have no influence. Like you have, like you're ready to start. You're like clean slate, except for 22.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah, I can't, like, I wasn't even that excited about it other than like, hey, that looks cool when the first trailers were coming out. And now it's damn near the top of my list for Pixar movies.
Mm-hmm. Like, I keep thinking about when am I gonna watch it again.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I'm like, this is one I think I can actually go back to without feeling wrecked. Because, like, a lot of my favorite Pixar movies are, like, Coco. Coco is my favorite Pixar movie. It is devastating. Like, it's a happy ending in the end, but it's still devastating to have, like, to rewatch some of those moments.
Oh, no, there's massive family trauma. Yeah. Like, it's all cute and pretty and colorful, but like, oh my god, like the core of that story, even all the way to the end, that's rough. There's like a lot of, or even the idea that people forget you and you disappear.
Yeah.
Because someday you're just gonna run out of family to put your photo on the orenda, like, because that's just what happened. Oh my god, that's like, that's hard. That's hard. It's just pretty and sparkly, but like, I know what you mean. This one left me feeling like it felt like a hug. I felt like it was like a weighted blanket that I needed to get through this holiday.
Like, it's so interesting because, like, the end of Toy Story 3 is technically in that same realm, but it's just so devastating at the same time as being a happy ending. Same with, like, Coco and Onward. And, like, Monsters, Inc. does it in a way where it's like, it is devastating at the end, but then you get that one little sting of, like, happiness at the very end when he pokes his head back into the fixed door. But most of them have this, like, we're gonna give you happiness, but you have to, like, balance it out with something else. Whereas this is just, like, a satisfaction at the end of it. Because I think that might be one of the lessons, is just you have to find a place where it's okay. And ultimately, like, sure, that's the lesson in all these movies, but I think that this one is more so that, like, it's not about a situation being okay. It's just that accepting that in general you'll be okay it's a huge thing that lightens the things that could be, like, with how existential everything in this movie is. It really lightens the load of how heavy that is.
And just like the whole thing about, like, once they spoiler, this is a body swap done right.
This has Freaky Friday as opposed to taking advantage of someone.
But like when she eats the pizza and she's like, oh my god, this is like amazing, and just like simple things that like we take for granted. Or when he's in this part stuck with me, when he leaves the barbershop. That scene is so like, good. When he's like, I never knew this about you, and he's like, well, you never asked. And it's like, oh my god, like, it's, even though jazz is what he loves and music is what, and in society, like, we respect people who are musicians and passionate and hone their craft and that's their life, and we expect them to be engrossed in it, but like at the same time, you miss out, even if you love something, you're missing out on everything else. It's not like the end all be all of your world. And it's also a good message that one thing should not be the end all be all of your world. But I took that to heart. I talk too much. I don't ask enough questions. I treat too many conversations like I'm in an interview.
Yeah, I
So I'm
think
taking
we
that as a
all kind of do that to an extent because it's I think everybody is uncomfortable in a conversation where they are not just like small talk, awkward elevator kind of situation. So I think everybody overcorrects and just it's like, oh, and this and this and this and this, as opposed to just being like, hey, what's going on with you? It's an interesting thing to get out of this movie. Like there's 900 different angles that you can find some sort of lesson in this movie, and it's fascinating.
it covers so much. Like just so much.
It's wild. But like yeah, I just the thing about talking about like where my preferences for Pixar movies, like the way that I've aged and found myself leaning in a different direction. The first movie came out when I was like 10 and a half. With the first Toy Story came out when I was 10 and a half. Every movie probably through maybe even like up in Toy Story 3, like every movie that I liked the most was always a very direct thing where it's like Toy Story is about like just basically being friends with people. Toy Story 2 was about feeling lost and relying in those friends. It's like, it's these things that were very easy lessons to learn. And then it hit a point. Maybe it was when I was getting more existential around like 25, where I straight up had a breakdown. That thing started to change. And the past couple of years, though, especially, my favorite 3 movies are Coco, Soul, and Onward. And they all kind of have the same end point in a way, where it's Onward is searching for something for so long that you become okay with saying goodbye to it without being able to actually experience it. Soul kind of had that too. And then Coco is about saying goodbye to something where you had the thing the whole time. And it's an interesting thing. Like Toy Story 3, I guess, falls in that same realm, but it's just an interesting thing to feel the shift of my own preference in these movies over time and looking back on that sort of journey. Because there's not a ton of companies that I could say like I aged with them. Like Disney, Marvel, Star Wars all existed before I was around, and like these movies I grew up with them, so it's just kind of an interesting thing to experience in and that could be unrelated to me experiencing the movies. That could just be me being in my own head about things, but it's specifically with these movies that I've noticed it. So it's interesting to me to go through that.
My favorite's still WALL-E, but
well, because you want a robot puppy.
I do. I don't know. There's something about a movie where no dialogue is spoken but carries so much volume. Like, I mean, eventually people talk, but not until like you're almost halfway through the movie, unless you count like the little
and
him
also
saying
and
his
like
name.
the usage of an old movie. That's I would say does not count in the purpose of what you are trying to say.
Of like characters having complex dialogue with each other. But then again, that has a different message.
I guess
about
except
environments
for
and
oh no, why can't I think of his name? I'm so mad at myself.
Fred Willard?
Yes. I'm so mad at myself.
I was just thinking that. I also liked how they used live action. Because he's the only
human voice in the first half of that movie, besides the like footage of an old movie.
Mm-hmm. But I liked that. I liked the style of it. But that also had a message and they had a mission. And I liked the end when they fixed the Earth. But
when they were like, maybe we should stop fucking up the world.
And like, do you think about Inside Out like all the time? Like when you're like in your own head, are you like?
So here's the thing. It's weird. Inside Out should be, with what I've been talking about, at the top of my list, but it hit me just like it came out right before I started making that change. So for some reason it doesn't list as high. Like I should probably revisit it for that reason, but in the aspect of like when I first saw it, it's sort of in the middle. But like I'm sure if I revisit it, I'll be like, yeah, this is my shit now. Like,
there's just certain aspects of it that like stick with me, like when a random song pops into your head that you're like, why is this here? Or like sometimes I wonder, when you look at memories over time, do they change in tone? do you realize something that you thought was happy was actually sad, or vice versa?
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff. I think about it less of the movie and less of like how my own head works, but that one like stuck with me on those like sort of levels.
Mhm.
But yeah, I hope Pixar can continue doing these kind of films. Like I know you're probably not going to sell like squishy little like I don't know little what did you call the little souls?
I think they will. Like, I just think Disney didn't market them with merchandise as much, but I think like the little like disembodied versions of like Joe and 22 and like the emotions, I think are great characters to sell toys of. I just think that they didn't think of doing that because these are headier than their typical like, oh well, we have a movie that's full of toys, we'll just sell those toys. We'll sell a plush of Sully, or like I think that they have a hard time realizing that like just because this is headier doesn't mean there aren't cute things to sell from these movies. It's very weird.
Oh my god, there's a shirt that says it's Terry time.
Yeah.
Honestly, if there's one part of the movie that we didn't mention that I absolutely love,
Moonwind.
which is yes, yeah. How did you know?
Because that was possibly my favorite performance in the whole movie. Like they're all very good performances, but this is like the one cartoony one. And like it's fucking Graham Norton, like who's not even really an actor. It's so bizarre to me that like it was so good though. I absolutely loved that character.
Someday I'm gonna be. That's my goal to like
to be
really
a sign spinner.
To really tap in to my meditation, to really ground my core, ground my emotions, and be able to travel to another plane to help lost souls shed that weight.
That was like the like that whole sequence too was the perfect level of scary, but not too scary as well. Just when the lost, like when 22 was a lost soul, that got probably scarier than I expected it to in terms of like what a child would be able to deal with. But the earlier take when you don't really know who the people are, I think that was the right amount of like, it was more spooky than scary. And then the climactic aspect of it at the end was definitely very scary in terms of just like, I probably wouldn't have like a 5 or 6 year old at this movie. Maybe 8 to 10 is the better starting point. My cousin's kids, one of them would definitely not be able to deal with that part of this movie. So that's definitely going to be, granted, it's probably better that people can watch it at home as opposed to like if they were going to see a movie in a movie theater. I think that would be a difficult thing to do with that part of the movie. But I guess being at home, they can just be like, okay, I'm going to go in the other room now.
I mean, now when you mention that too, I'm thinking about, well, I mean, Aria's big thing right now, my niece, is Trolls World Tour.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe when she's like 6.
Most successful movie of the year last year.
Right. I can't wait to tell her that Rock You Like a Hurricane is not an original Trolls number, because she sings that one to me. It's a good one. Do you know what it's like to have a 2-year-old sing that to you? It's adorable.
There was a VHS tape that my grandmother I was like too old for it at this point, but my grandmother gave me this tape that was a Trolls tape. And this is obviously like old school Trolls. And I just remember there was basically like a Bob Seger version of a troll.
Of course.
And specifically because they performed the song Old Time Rock and Roll, but guess what it was called?
Old Time Rock and Troll?
Yes, it was.
I win.
It was basically like a low budget puppet tape thing. It wasn't a show, but it was clear that it was like a pilot for a show that never got picked up, so they just released it on tape. It was bad. It was real bad. This was given to me. It was clearly made for like a 5-year-old, and it was given to me when I was like 12. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll watch this. Whatever. I'm at home. I got nothing to do. Yeah, Trolls World Tour. Crazy. it hit at just the right time, and Universal was like, oh, we're just going to put this out at home. And everybody bought it.
Yep. And like that is her it's up there with it's up there with Frozen. Just up there with Frozen. Frozen, Trolls World Tour. And the whatever the last Grinch that came out. Those are the three.
The Grinch.
The Grinch. My niece loves
Actually,
the Grinch.
no, was that one The Grinch Who Stole Christmas?
That's like I think it's
because the Jim Carrey one was originally just called The Grinch, and then they changed it after the fact.
This is the CG one.
No, I know. But that's what's confusing me is, so this one's just Dr. Seuss's The Grinch. Mm-hmm. The Jim Carrey one was originally called The Grinch, and then they changed it years later to The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, because it was originally just The Grinch because they didn't want to confuse it with the cartoon. And there's far too complicated things with the naming of The Grinch.
Yeah, but anyway, actually, you know what? Because of her love of that movie, maybe she'll be more mature to watch this one, because I don't know, she doesn't find him scary. She just sees a green man that lives on a mountain with his dog, and she loves his dog. Loves his dog Max. He's much nicer to Max in the newest one.
I mean, he's also it's also a cute version of the character as opposed to Jim Carrey's nightmare makeup job.
yeah, no. It's definitely
everyone in the live action movie looks like a nightmare.
Yep.
Even the Who's. Poor Christine Baranski. Deserved better.
Actually, I don't know. She could pull off the Who makeup. If anybody could, it was her.
Clint Howard.
By the way, I found your Trolls radio show sing-along.
Oh, yeah?
It's called the Trolleys, and it's available on Pandora, so if you would like me to send that to you.
On Pandora? Oh, so just the songs.
Yeah, so you can buy the whole soundtrack, and it looks like it's also on YouTube.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Yep. So, if you were just like, man, I'm feeling nostalgic, don't you worry, buddy. I found it for you.
You typically get nostalgic for things that you like. So.
It's just doing my job as your friend here. I wouldn't want to deprive you of that memory.
It is interesting to know that, like, when the first, like, Trolls movie came out a few years ago, the McElroy brothers from My Brother and Me created a podcast called The McElroys Will Be in Trolls 2. And then they eventually were in Trolls 2. So, good for them. I don't know if I'll ever see that movie. What is it? There's a troll that's like all shiny and silver glitter, and he like farts glitter. Is that right?
They all fart glitter, but there are two. He has a baby, and his baby's a great rapper. But they birth babies out of their hair. I don't know how I'm going to explain all this to Aria someday.
All I know is that at Universal Studios, only one of them farts glitter.
I think it's the sparkly one.
It is.
It is the sparkly one whose name I can't remember. I also like the one there's literally like a gummy worm, a sentient gummy worm.
That's the other thing is I'm like so far out of, like, every time I see designs for these trolls, I'm just like, that's not a troll. That's just not. Because like there's like Ron Funches plays like a horse-ish troll.
That's because he's a funk troll and he didn't know it. Big reveal, spoiler. He was living with the pop trolls his whole life, so he hadn't found his people.
That's why he's shaped like a horse?
Yes, that's what all the funk trolls are shaped like. He's a different race of troll.
Oh my god, I can't believe I opened this can of worms. Anyway. This is far too deep down in the troll hole. So yeah.
That wraps up our 2020 movie season schedule, podcast season, I guess, because now we're in 2021, and I guess most of our focus for a little bit is going to be on TV again, because we have WandaVision coming up.
Vision. And then whatever WB movies get released on HBO Max. We'll see you next time. Bye.